is it okay? Okay. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new session of Unleash Your Soul. I'm Julie, and I am here today with Miss Tru Eastman, and so excited, you guys. She has been a longtime friend in the hair industry and also in this spiritual realm that we are currently focusing and highlighting on. And I would just love for you all to sit back and enjoy this conversation and ask yourself some questions along the way, and maybe those will get answered today in this call. So thank you, Tru, so much for being here.
Julie, thank you. I'm pleased as punch that you called me to do this. I'm excited. Thank you.
Good. Yay. I'm so excited. I really do. Honestly, I love interviewing everyone. It's so fun to just see personalities come out and really shine some light on different and alternative ways of healing. And I think we're all in a place right now where that is very important, that we need to continue to get to know ourselves and push forward so that we can support those coming behind and with us.
Absolutely. So, we all rise together, right?
Yeah. Amen.
We all rise together or we don't rise at all.
Yep. So I agree. The more we can focus on being one and working together, it's limitless, our opportunities for sure. So
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay, so thank you so much. So let's just dive right in. And I'm just going to ask you, tell me a little about what type of modality, or maybe what's a good way to explain your type of magic to everybody.
Well, I would think that the best way to describe me is I'm a transformationalist. So I'm a soul coach. I work with people on their shadow work mostly, as far as I'm doing the coaching. Now, shadow work sometimes comes across as a scary idea. Oh, I want to avoid the shadows, right? But the truth of the matter is our power, our personal power is in the shadow. So when we can seek through and find that, then we transform who we are. Our life changes and things get better. So a lot of the ways that I will do that is I host a monthly public free dark moon ceremony, and I teach people how to seek the shadow within and just choose one subject to work on. And I teach them how to use the energy of the moon for the next 30 days to work on this one thing, really keep it simple and dive deep with it. And it's amazing. I get so many people that come back the next month and they're like, whoa, that was, something. And then I also do soul coaching. So it's one-on-one. And I have an intake form, and I just kind of ask a bunch of random questions, and I get a feel for where you're at. And I literally just let spirit guide the session in a way that I understand patterns, and I see the patterns and how they connect. Plus, I'm audible. So when you have spirit guides around, or my own guides will say things to me, I can hear that, and I'm like, oh, okay, so we're doing this, right? And then I just bring up a way of manifesting that action that I hear to guide someone to doing, and then give them like homework, and I have them work on it for 30 days. I'm super big on daily ritual. Daily ritual will set up a pace that becomes measurable for your progress. If you don't have something that you're doing every day that you can count on, then how are you going to figure out if you made progress or not? So that's kind of foundational for a lot of the stuff that I do. As far as the healing sessions, they range for anything from access consciousness to Reiki or energetic sessions, drumming, soul cord cutting, just soul retrievals, a lot of different things. So my sessions are individual. And then I also teach my magic classes. So I am a 5th degree mystic. And in that 5 degrees, I have basically learned and practiced everything to do with numerology, astrology, the moons, the crystals, the chakras, spell casting or manifesting or affirmations, however you like to use that word. It's kind of all the same action, right? But I teach classes and I teach people. I always create a really amazing workbook, and I teach others how to use the same thing, because my theme is you are the magic. You're the magic. I'm just showing you how to bring it out, and how you create it for you is like designed for you. It's so perfect. I'm just a guide.
I love that. I love that. I think that's so important. And okay, so you talk about dark and shadow work, and you did kind of touch on this a little bit. People get a little nervous or fearful of, well, I'm super bright and joyful and light all the time. What do you mean shadow? So give me your explanation of what you would tell someone about that. Like when they ask you very simply, what are you talking about, my shadow?
That's a great question, and I get that question asked a lot. And when it really comes down to it, it's underneath all the happy face, underneath our choice to be joyous and go about and do our life in a functional or dysfunctional way, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. There are the relationships or the patterns that have been embedded in our psyche and in our way of doing life since the beginning. And so when we seek those shadows, we're literally looking for the thing that's just maybe out of sync a little bit, and then we go into it a little bit more. So sometimes, say you are bad with money, right? Maybe you always find yourself pushing at the end of every single month to debt. And a lot of times, like, people will say, well, I just don't make enough money to not be out of debt. I can promise you, I've worked with people who make a lot of money and have the same pattern. So that's a shadow that's actually underneath, and it could be restricted to maybe your parents never taught you how to appropriately put money in savings and to put money in a certain place and to do certain things with your money, right? So what you're used to doing is living on credit or borrowed money, or even pushing it, right? There's more month at the end of the money kind of a thing. And it's just become a pattern or a habit or a cycle that you've gotten yourself into. So then the question comes along, what's the shadow behind that? Because if you're sick and tired of that pattern, if you're sick and tired of it, it's a shadow. If I was going to give it a short one-liner, if you're sick and tired of it, it's a shadow, and it deserves to be enlightened so that you can shift it and change it.
I love that. And I love the sick and tired of it, because that does speak to everyone. We all have something that we are sick and tired of. And if you don't, I'd like you to really get curious and question yourself a little bit, because there's something. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And you kind of touched a little bit on money. And I think that is a big issue for a lot of people, and they seem to just kind of give up. So give us like an example, maybe a little piece of maybe one little thing that you feel like really does. I know you've touched on rituals every day. Maybe give us just something, a tidbit that you feel like really could help someone that may be a struggle for them.
I will give you my own personal shadow work lesson that I learned. Okay, so I did some work on this, and the thing that I found was I made off of some questions. So there's a graph, and I created a graph to actually grade each, it's like the 8 categories of my life, right? And in that, what I found was that to the level that I was willing to celebrate who I am, celebrate my life, celebrate the things that I do, okay? Like, how many times have I personally, I check off the goal, and then I say, oh, okay, fine, good, that one's done. Then I go on to the next one. Okay, that one's done. And so I become very task and goal oriented in what I'm doing personally. And I don't stop to literally just be like, good morning, Tru, you did such a good job today. And I'm like, celebrate me, right?
Right.
And the body and the person that have come, the spirit and the body that have come together. So the second part to this was that I realized that my willingness to celebrate me and to actually look at basically my joy in my life was a direct reflection of my money. Okay, so I am my money. So this is what I really discovered, that all these other aspects of my life, my physical, I was pretty pleased with that. It wasn't a 10, but it was like a 7, right? And then it's like the celebrate my life and money, and the one other thing that is right out of my mind right now, but there were 3 things that came together, and they were all in the 3 range, on a scale of 1 to 10, they were like 3 and 4. And I just looked at this graph and I was like, oh, wow. So directly, I knew for sure that my willingness to celebrate who I am and live my life in a way that had a lot of joy in it, like take time to play, also directly affected how my money was looking. So I just, I started doing that shadow work on, okay, so what can I do to bring myself more joy each day? How can I tap into my willingness to celebrate my life so that my money says, oh, I'm celebrating? Because, if we've done any money work at all, we understand that we are the expression of our money manifestation, and our amount of joy and willingness to live from joy inside here directly affects how much the world is willing to show us in the money aspect. And it doesn't mean people have to show up and pay me, but it shows up in ways that are really amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
They work together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you are willing to share with us some of those personal experiences, because I think a lot of us tend to think, well, I'm happy or I'm joyful. And it's really cool that you have taken the time, you've broken it down, and you yourself have worked through this program that you've built. And so give us another little piece that comes to my next question of maybe a part of your life. When did you and how and did you come upon, like, this is what I want to be doing? Give us kind of an experience. I don't know. I think you have a good idea of something that you could share with us to maybe help someone else understand that they too have a gift. And it's just about what was that thing for you?
So mine goes back 40 years. Okay. So when I was 16, I started doing hair in my mom's salon. And 2 years previous to that, I started cutting the boys in the neighborhood's hair quite well.
Yeah,
right. It was like,
awesome.
And from the first haircut, I was like, this is super fun. I love this. So it was the connection piece, and it was transformative, and it was an instant hook for me.
Right.
And so then as I started my apprenticeship, I had a lot of people way older than I was that I was doing their hair. And I always took it as an opportunity to learn from them. I watched them parent their kids. I watched them do their relationships. I watched how they did their jobs. I watched their opinions. I learned. And then when I was 23, I actually had what only today I can describe as an awakening. At the time, everything around me, it physically moved and shifted. I had to hold on to a countertop to kind of brace myself, because it felt like I had just gone into one of those wavy dreams that are on the TV when we were young,
Yeah.
And yeah, it was definitely different. And I was coming from a place in my life where honestly I was not happy, and I couldn't figure out why. I was coming from a place of I didn't know me. I wasn't enough for me.
Mhm.
And my husband was fabulous. I had 2 beautiful children, I had a wonderful career, a home, a car, like everything was in place. It was beautiful, but my soul was missing something. And I didn't even have that language at that time. So this is a today language explaining back in time.
Right.
So with that, this experience happened, and I knew that I had to embark on a life that was independent of where I had been. So I became a single mom and went through relationships and did all this stuff. And with each move that I went through, each step I took, something led me more and more toward things like astrology and numerology and psychic readings. And it just became one of those things where I was naturally drawn to the mysteries. And as a Scorpio, a double Scorpio, I am drawn to the mysteries. That's just who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or maybe some people don't know that, right? But that is part of an astrology thing. So in doing people's hair, I learned that I learned a lot of things from other people. And I said, there's got to be more. Although I love doing hair, what else am I going to do when I'm 70 and nobody's going to think that I'm so cool doing hair anymore?
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, you better have a new gig. So I thought, I couldn't speak in front of people. And I really had to step out and do some really brave and scary things. And that was, start teaching and talking. And I started with, kind of some women that I knew that'd come and take my classes, and I would lead a full moon ceremony, and kind of got comfortable with my own voice and comfortable with so much of my own self that I wasn't worried that other people didn't like it or whatever. It's like, if you like me, you show up and you come back. And if it's not for you, I'm not offended. I still honor who you are. Right. And I know I'm honored in that process too. So I think that just the original career, the transformational, the feeling of wow. And I wanted to continue repeating that as time has gone on into new experiences. And so when I teach a class on runes or something like that, and the class is packed and everybody leaves with big smiles on their face and they feel like they got something of value from me, then I get that feeling again. And so I know it's what pushes me into teaching and to coaching, because I watch the transformation for people, and that's what it is.
That's so awesome. And I love that at that young age that you were able to honor your own voice, that own inner voice, and become curious enough to ask questions. And it wasn't comfortable for you, obviously. I don't think any growth we ever have ever is comfortable. And yet you were willing to accept that, to find new things, and going through that uncomfortability, it created more courage for you. And then you just continued to grow and learn. And then you're here. Look at where you're at now. And for those that don't know you, they're getting to know you now. And you are a beautiful, amazing, strong woman. And you shine so brightly. And so I've just loved watching that process a little bit that I have known you. And I love that you are willing to dive into those uncomfortable spaces, even with yourself, so that you can help guide others through that. That's so beautiful. And I would love to hear more about, for people, the auditory. I think people talk a lot about if they're clairvoyant or they have this ability with astrology, which I know you also have. And I'd like a little more on that too for people, but tell us kind of your first experience of did you hear something one time, or how did you kind of learn that you worked better, that was your tool?
When I was 23 and the awakening happened, what came with that, not only were colors brighter when I opened my eyes,
interesting,
but I went home that night, and I had been working on a movie set at the Osmond studio that was then the Osmond studio. And I went home that night, and as I walked through, I pulled up to my house and I heard myself having this conversation. And I literally said, "This is where I live?" I was like, "Really?" And I pulled in and I start walking, and this other voice says to me, "Yes, this is where you live." And I said, "I decorated this? Like, this was my decorating? I did this?" And I felt like I walked into somebody else's house, but there was this conversationalist who was speaking with me at the same time.
Right.
And as I walked through the different rooms, and everyone was asleep, and I walked through every room, looking all around the walls and trying to just identify with it. And it wasn't until I walked into my children's bedrooms and I was like, "Oh, those are mine." Right? Like, I got that.
You knew that.
And I knew that. And when I walked in, to my bedroom and my husband's asleep, and I was like, wow, like we're not compatible. We're not in sync anymore. It's like whatever just happened, we are on our own separate journeys now. And so it took a couple of weeks for me to process all of that. But that was the first time that I heard the voice. And since then, I practice shamanic techniques, and I do a lot of different, Kabbalah and tarot and shamanic and, all these different things. And each time when you do more and more, you gain more access to guides, and the more open you become is really what it is. And if your gift is visual, I'm somewhat visual here, but not as audible, right? I can close my eyes and see things, but I hear much more automatically than I am clairvoyant. I have a goodness with feeling. I'll know things. I think we are all capable of all of it, but which ones are showing up with ease and which ones are we working on or actually giving attention to? And the audible came as soon as the awakening or transformation, whatever it was that happened. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
But that was, that's when that came about. And so I will much of the time be sitting or standing behind a client, even doing their hair, and I'll hear, and then you end up saying something like, well, they want me to say, right? They want me to tell you. And then I realized, gosh, they probably don't know who they are.
Right. I love this. I love that. And I love that you were open, like you just shared, enough to understand. You didn't immediately think you were crazy and second guess yourself. To me, that is courage. And that's an awakening of itself. And especially at that age, I can't imagine having that type of wisdom coming through. It just shows me that you were definitely meant to be on this path. But at the same time, you still had a choice, right?
I did. Well, yes, I think we always have a choice. I could have done nothing with it. I could have shut myself down and stayed small like I had been. I could have said, no, I can't accept this. But I saw it like this window was moving, and it was a pretty large window, but it was like you either jump or you're going to go back to where you were. And where I was at the time is I had a severe eating disorder. I was working crazy, and every time I got upset at my husband because he enjoyed that I could work and make money and do all this kind of thing, and it seemed one of those things where he would come into my work and kind of erase my schedule. If you haven't been in a hair salon, that won't make any sense to you, but right. He'd erase my lines out on the appointment book. And I remember one day thinking, screw you, I'll stay here all damn day. You know what I mean? And then I just won't eat anything either. And I'll show you, right? Like, who was I hurting?
Yeah, right. We kind of get in that space for sure. Definitely. And I love that you are sharing that you are human. This isn't a thing that no one has these gifts. And that's what I feel is so important. And that you have had experiences in life, that you are human. You've had the disordered eating or the marital situations that a lot of people have experienced. And I love that you have made that choice to accept your gifts and move forward. And I just feel strongly, and tell me on your end how you're feeling, but there are people that didn't make that choice. So what would you have to offer them right now?
I see people all the time who can't make that choice. They have the opportunity and they're scared. They don't want to, they don't realize that they're living in fear, and that fear makes them feel like they're safe. So it's actually an untruth. But they would be much more safe if they could rely on themselves, right? But they're in fear, and in that fear house, that house of fear, they feel like it's the house of safety. And I watch them. And the thing that I want to say is, if there's any way possible for you to ask yourself, what is self-love and self-worth? And am I worth it? Because the worth is really what it boils down to. There's love, and people want to be loved, but they really want to be understood and heard more so than love, right? They want that. So if we are always looking outside of ourselves for someone else to understand us and to hear us and to love us and to make us happy, we don't stand a chance. Because my job, Tru Eastman's job, is to make Tru Eastman happy and fill my bucket. And then it's also my job to sleep. Like, I can sleep for myself, but you can't sleep for me, Julie. You can't say, I think I'll go take a nap for Tru, right? And you can't take a nap for me any easier than you can exercise for me, or drink water for me, or get me drunk toasted, or get me make me happy. You know what I'm saying? You can't do any of those things. And so when they say that the power is within you, it's so multifaceted, because nobody can take your power. You can say, I don't want this power here. You take it and tell me what to do, right? And that's in essence what fear is. And you feel like it's safety when you're turning over and saying to someone else, you take this power, okay? And then what about the people who are suffering from depression and anxiety? Maybe they're sad inside because they didn't know that they had a choice. They didn't know that they had a choice. And then the other part is that if you're expecting, I see so many young people who are PO'd at their parents, and they they're nasty and talk terrible to their parents, and they're so mad because their parents just aren't doing enough for them, right? Well,
Right.
parents, I think you do too much. I think when that child could walk, they needed to walk themselves. You didn't need to carry them. I think when that child could spoon feed itself, it needed to feed itself. You didn't need to sit and spoon feed it anymore.
Right.
When it could, all the steps have to be taken. And when we have a society that it's commonplace that our children are in their 20s and 30s and still living off of the parents, we as parents have handicapped them.
Right.
So when coming back to self-love, reeling it all back in, self-worth starts when you understand you're worth it, and you understand it's up to you to do it.
Right.
And just break it down to simple, like, can anybody else do anything for you that has to do with your spirit and your body?
Right.
Because
yeah, I love it. That's so great. It really is. It's a wake-up call in its own space of understanding that no one is coming for you. No one. The only person that will show up for you is you. And I love all that you've shared around and through that, because every single person is unique, they're of value, and they have worth. And you need to take a minute and take a step out of your situation and find that value and find that worth. And it's crazy. Do you feel like, too, when you have helped someone maybe get a little piece of worth that they didn't have before, do you see the changes pretty drastically with that?
Yes. That really is part of the shadow work. And so when I present this idea to someone who hasn't seen I promise every woman or man, mostly women that I work with, but I do work with some men, but every time I say, are you worth the time and love in your life? Are you worth it? Or if I say, I promise you, you are worth it, they always tear up. It's always very emotional, because somewhere inside of us, we're not sure if we're worth it. And so when they start to do some of the things that, the daily rituals, and I let them design based on their belief system and where they're at, they get to design their ritual, but I hold to accountability. It's like a weekly check-in.
Right.
And we don't get to do work until they've done these things for 30 days, because the soul, the information, no new information comes from the voices if they haven't done that first ground level work that was told to us in the first session, right?
Right.
So I just feel that the transformation takes place every single time that someone's willing to do the work for themselves.
Right.
And that's, I just think that when I bring it to their attention that way, and they have a moment and an opportunity to just stop and go, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, because we're on autopilot. When we're expecting husbands to make us happy, or boyfriends or girlfriends or wives to make us happy, or our parents, or, and that's a big one. Like, it's somebody else's job to make me happy, damn it. And then it's like, actually, it's not. It's really not.
Right. And that is emotional. I even get emotional when you're asking that question, like, what is your worth? Are you worth it? Are you willing to put the work in for yourself? And the culture and the society that I feel like we're in here in Utah is very interesting, where there's just been kind of pushed a lot of service and do for others constantly. And so for someone to take a step back and actually truly be asked, are you okay with finding your own worth, is very emotional, maybe even more so than it probably ever could or should be for someone. And so that is awesome. And I love that you are doing that work for people. I love that you have a program, and that it does take its time and go a little slower, that things don't necessarily change overnight, but that you can make a choice to make a change today.
Yeah, and to be gentle with yourself and be willing to go on the journey, because really, when it boils right down to it, life is a journey. And I know that sounds so cliche, but when that really hits in here, and you get that, a friend of mine, for example, last night, we were all gathered together, and we were doing this thing, and she's got these same three things that she said, I've been working on these things since I was 16, all these years of my life, and she's almost 60. And she just said, when am I going to get over this? And I said, or when am I going to be done with this? Right. And I said, what if those three things that you've always been challenged by, because in astrology, numerology, and so many of the other teachings, what challenges you, kicks you in the butt to go after your blessings? I said, what if those are the things that have always made you grow and understand people? Because she's a fantastic healer.
Right.
And she does some amazing work with people. But if she would have not had those things that because a lot of those core things are the same things that people come to her for.
Right.
And if she had not had those, she wouldn't have the gift of, and so she has mastered it, yet it's still a challenge to her, which is what means she keeps growing, you know?
Right. That's awesome. I love that you shared that, because it is so true. A lot of us, I feel like, and maybe why you are watching this video today is you're searching for something else to do and fix whatever it is that you feel your issue is, but maybe take a minute and look at it really and see where you're really at. Like, that's such a good perspective shift for that. Oh my gosh. Okay. Really quickly, because we've taken tons of time, so I really appreciate it. But tell me, you've touched a little bit about your astrology and like going through and guiding people through that process. Do you feel like that helps support people to have that knowledge? Is that something you offer your clients? Like, do you do kind of birth charts and moon sign, like that type of thing? Like, give us a little tidbit on that.
So all the tools that I teach through classes, I use. I find them very practical tools to be able to apply. And that's my way of teaching, is to teach a practical use of the mystical tools.
Right.
Because, you know, when I've got a client and we're looking at something in their birth chart or in their progressed sun chart, or we take a look at their numbers, and then we even, you know, apply those things over each other and kind of like compare those things. Or if I use any of my shamanic tools, right? So the tools that I teach are to be used practically. They're also a language. And once you understand the language, you open, just like learning any language or going to any other place in the world,
right.
you open up something that wasn't there before, that brings about understanding, right? So understanding is here in the head, and understanding is that knowing that's on like right in your core, right in your center.
I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. They're all useful tools, and I use all of them for my soul coaching, and I also teach all of them because they are practical. And that's why my course is called Practical Magic, because it's actually used to go, you know, with your day-to-day life, you know. Plus they're fun conversation pieces. When somebody sits down or you meet someone, you're like, so what's your birthday? And you get their numerology right off the bat, plus you get their astrology, and you kind of understand their element and, you know, all this thing. And you're like, oh, so then you like this and this and this, you know, whatever. And they're like, how did you know that?
Yeah.
So it definitely makes for fun.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that it's just a simple tool that many of us maybe have scratched barely the surface of. And then you talk about the numerology piece of it. And then there's like the moon piece of it and the birth chart. And it really can be combined to just give you that. I love that understanding to support your choices and your decisions, or maybe the things that you've been hearing that you haven't tuned into all the way. And so, yeah, this is amazing work that you're doing. And I love that you have, for everyone to know, you do the classes, like group classes, so that if you can't afford to do an individual one-on-one, there are opportunities to learn. And I would highly recommend any of you watching that just check, we'll put a link in below this video so that you can click on that and get more information from Tru of when her classes are and how to get in touch with her and things like that. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And thanks to all of you who may be watching. And I hope that you all have an awesome day today. And I really do appreciate being in a space where